Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Min. Today we are going to talk about a serial killer who frequently sent letters to the police similar to the Zodiac killer. However, in this case, the letters were more of an emotional expression rather than an attempt to make the police decipher riddles. So I'm not really clickbaiting, am I? But he was no normal violent attacker either, as he would want to taste his victims. And before we started the story, I should introduce you this beautiful city in China, Hangzhou, where his first victim was found. You may have heard that online shopping has essentially dominated the consumer market in China, and when talking about online shopping, Alibaba cannot be left out. The famous Alibaba is based in Hangzhou City. In fact, in recent years, the booming industry of live streaming online shopping in China has also centered around this Hangzhou City and its surrounding cities. So, economically speaking, Hangzhou can be described as a thriving city. Additionally, its scenery is undeniably breathtaking, at least for us Chinese people. Many other places in China have tried to replicate the West Lake in Hangzhou City to create similar attractions. There are countless legends and stories about the West Lake in Hangzhou in Chinese history and culture, and it's even featured on this Chinese currency. In short, this is a beautiful city that brings together talented individuals, auspicious geographical features, and a rich history. Only after experiencing the beauty of this city can you understand the brutality of the killer we will discuss today and how out of place his actions were in such a vibrant and lovely place. Now let's rewind time and go back to the year 1999. The Lander building was a newly built office building that was completed around 1999. It's located in a great spot in the Hangzhou high-tech development zone's IT blueprint and offered a nice atmosphere for offices. The building has 19 above-ground floors and 2 underground levels, with a total construction area of 20,378 square meters. Each floor covers approximately 950 square meters. The overall design is sleek and elegant, excluding a modern and sophisticated ambience. But of course, when I said how fancy this building was, it looks like this. By today's standard, it's just a very ordinary building. So I will show you other contemporary buildings in Hangzhou. Most office buildings in the city center were made of concrete walls, rarely with all-glass design. And where ordinary people lived, most were these shorter houses. From the 10th floor and above, one can enjoy a panoramic view of the picturesque West Lake landscape, mountains, and parts of the city. These tranquil offices offer both scenic beauty and come at a premium price. Consequently, the security guards would pay extra attention to the offices above the 10th floor during their purchase, as these tenants were classified as important clients, while they pay extra for their offices. So on the 22nd of February 1999, one of the security guards was routinely scouting the building. A faintly strange smell caught his attention. It was like the pungent odor of some kind of wild animal. He was puzzled, wondering where the smell could be coming from. He talked to himself while he was looking for this place where this bad smell was emitting. He found it when he went to the restroom and followed the odor. And there, in front of him, was a large bag, animating an unsettling and strong stench. Of course, up until this point, the security guard hadn't quite realized the gravity of the situation. He simply thought it might be some discarded animal carcass or something similar. So he reached out to pull the bag out, undid the knot at the opening, and wanted to see what was inside causing such a haunting stench. He felt something round and sticky slip out of the bag and fall to the ground. He was surprised and looked up to see it was a human head on the floor, and he waited no time to call the police. Within that bag was a lot of human pieces. It was put in a way as that people who take their studies seriously organize their textbooks neatly in their backpack instead of just cramming them in and letting them jostle around or fall out. After the forensic team arrived, they counted the pieces. There were around 30 pieces. And you can tell from this picture that even though some walls here are still under renovation, there are no signs of struggles or scuffle. This clearly isn't the primary crime scene. The police subsequently conducted a thorough search of the entire building and unsurprisingly discovered a substantial amount of splatter-patterned bloodstains in another restroom on the opposite side. If all goes as expected, this would be the primary crime scene. After a forensic examination, these bloodstains were determined to belong to the deceased. Moreover, a significant number of fingerprints were extracted from both the bag and the restroom walls. Judging from the state of the body decomposition, the forensic examiner preliminarily estimated the time of death to be around 3 to 5 days prior to the discovery of the case. And since it was 1999, DNA check was widely used in forensic examinations in China. So the police could quickly find out the deceased was Miss Liu, an accountant who had been reported missing 3 days ago. According to the notes taken by her colleagues when they reported her disappearance, Miss Liu had stayed late at the company working alone one night. However, she never showed up the next day. Her colleagues couldn't reach her, so they contacted her family who lived out of town, and when they realized that none of them had any information or contact with Miss Liu, they promptly alerted the police. While the police were investigating the killer's information, the forensic examiner conducted a more detailed examination of the bag of the deceased. They arrived at a chilling conclusion. The body of this victim, her torso and limbs could be reassembled completely. So when all the puzzle pieces were used up, the missing part became glaringly obvious. A piece of meat from her leg was missing. Missing human tissues is not a good sign. Therefore, the police promptly intensified their investigation and eventually, while looking into the personnel of Lander Building, they came across a suspicious security guard, Liu Chao, happened to be on duty during the time when Miss Liu went missing, giving him a window of opportunity for the crime. Moreover, shortly after the incident, Liu Chao suddenly requested leave from his superiors, citing an urgent matter that required his presence at home, which is not in this Hangzhou city. After that, he seemed to disappear into thin air. The police obtained some basic information about the security guard, Liu Chao, from the personnel records of Lander Building. He was 24 years old at the time and was born in 1975. He had enlisted in the military in 1995 and was discharged in 1998. He arrived in Hangzhou in January 1999. The person in charge of hiring at Lander Building was impressed by Liu Chao's military experience and energetic demeanor. These matched the building's image, which is good for marketing purpose. So that's how he got hired. And when the police asked his colleagues, the other security guards said that now that the incident had happened, they looked back and realized that Liu Chao was indeed off. During their casual conversations, they talk about women, right? Like other normal guys. However, Liu Chao would often bring up topics about controlling and harming women. This made them uncomfortable, and they began to think that he might have some mental struggles. As a result, they gradually stopped engaging in conversations with him, so they didn't really get to know him well before he left. Moreover, when the police talked to individuals who worked and resided near Lander Building, they unexpectedly obtained a statement from someone who survived from Liu Chao. According to this survivor's account, she had once visited Lander Building during the Chinese New Year holiday to use the restroom. At the time, a security guard attended to her. He took her to a restroom that was far away and not well lit. He acted in a strange and scary way, and his gaze made her feel very, very uncomfortable. The girl who survived him felt a shiver down the spine and left the place immediately without even using the loo. After gathering all these clues, the police promptly arrived at Liu Chao's dormitory and extracted his fingerprints from his personal belongings. Following a comparison, Liu Chao's fingerprints matched those found on the large bag at the crime scene. Thus, the police confirmed that Liu Chao was the prime suspect in this murder case. But when they tried to catch Liu Chao, he had already disappeared without anyone being surprised. As a result, the police in Hangzhou put out a notice looking for Liu Chao throughout the city. They also asked the Public Security Bureau in Liu Chao's hometown to help, keeping an eye out for anything related to him and his families and friends there. Unfortunately, even after a month of investigation, Liu Chao couldn't be found and it seemed like he disappeared completely. However, another month passed, and the Hangzhou police suddenly received a letter with a sender's name boldly written as Liu Chao. In this letter, Liu Chao explained in details of what and how he conducted the crimes. In his confession, Liu Chao recounted an incident from his time in the military where he had witnessed a murder and dismemberment crime scene. Since then, he couldn't shake off the memory and had been pondering over how the perpetrator of that case had carried out the crime. Coincidentally or not long after the incident, Liu Chao was transferred to the military kitchen. His task there was to slaughter poultry and livestock, preparing ingredients. However, unlike others, while performing this duty, Liu Chao's thoughts led him to believe that slaughtering animals should be similar to slaughtering humans. He reckoned that if he viewed humans as livestock, he wouldn't feel fear about killing anymore. When he thought he had overcome the psychological barriers to murder, he couldn't wait to put his theory into practice. Unfortunately, he was still in the military at the time, and the strict discipline of the military didn't allow him prolonged solo outings without reporting. It wasn't until May of 1998 that Liu Chao was discharged from the military due to disciplinary violations. So it's not surprising he had to find a job on his own. As we mentioned earlier, Liu Chao successfully secured a position as a security guard. From the moment he joined the security team, he apparently had this murder plan in mind. For instance, he chose to stay back and work during the Chinese New Year holiday. It's widely known that the Chinese New Year holiday is a crucial time for family reunions, and many people would rather lose work than miss out on this occasion. Therefore, those who volunteer to work away from home during this time are few. In the past, before transportation and communication became easy, if someone spent a year working away from home, they would eagerly await the Chinese New Year holiday to return and see their families. And his luck came faster than he expected. Remember that survivor? She just randomly showed up in the building and asked to use the restroom. Although Liu Chao had been eager and ready in mind, he might not have had the necessary tools prepared. So he watched as she turned around and ran off. Of course, soon enough, his second chance came. On the 19th of February 1998, an accountant, Miss Liu, went back to work in the building, earlier than the majority. Miss Liu and Liu Chao were not strangers to each other because they both work in the same building, right? They would occasionally greet each other when they crossed paths. That afternoon, Miss Liu asked Liu Chao if she could borrow a bicycle for errands, and of course he would lend her that bike. While he watched her ride away, he had already made up his mind about where he would attack. He had 3 choices to pick from. First was a secluded, unleased room in the building. It was rarely passed by, especially during the Spring Festival period. Most of the companies renting offices hadn't yet resumed work after the holiday. This meant that even if there were cries for help, nobody would likely hear them in that remote room. The second option was a remote emergency stairwell. Much like the previous room, it was rarely traversed, even by the patrolling security guards. The third choice was the restroom, found in a quiet corner of a less busy floor around that time. Since there was water, it was the perfect place for his evil plan. Liu Chao couldn't control himself, repeatedly playing out this scenario of invading and harming Miss Liu in his mind. As evening approached, his fingers were trembling. He knew she would be returning soon. So, caught between excitement and fear, he bought a bottle of alcohol and downed it, taking deep breaths as if he was filling himself with courage. When Miss Liu finally returned and handed back the bicycle, Liu Chao, who had a red face, told her that he wanted to confess something. Faced with a young man who was blushing and acting extremely bashful, I suppose Miss Liu might have thought he was about to confess his feelings for her. She might have been unsure of whether to say no or yes. However, to avoid embarrassing the other person, she agreed and went with him to a quiet spot. She faced him, waiting for him to speak and wondering what he was going to say. In his letter to the police, Liu Chao said it was after she died, he wanted to rape the corpse. He said it was not completely out of sexual at the time. It was just him wanting to experience the feeling of conquest. Then he started to dismember the body with a knife. While working in the military kitchen and slaughtering animals, he was given special knives by the unit. These knives were not easy to find back then, as online shopping was not common and people could only purchase ordinary kitchen knives from nearby stores in the area. So he didn't expect it would be so messy to take apart a human with a regular kitchen knife. The blood was everywhere, and it was so tedious for him to tidy up after his crime. Said in his letter that he'd consider get a bucket next time to let the blood drip off before starting to chop off the meat and bones. He bagged the pieces and moved it under the sink in the restroom on the 11th floor that was undergoing renovations. He hoped that the workers who were renovating the place would find the bag he left for them after the Spring Festival and discover the surprise inside. Then he came back to this restroom where it all happened. He washed his hands and looked at himself in the mirror. He had heard that people who have killed would look different in their eyes and appearance. However, as he looked at himself, he didn't really feel any difference. Shaking his head, he washed the blood off his hands and prepared to leave. But suddenly a thought emerged. How it tastes like. After Liu Chao achieved his goals, he disappeared, right? Perhaps he felt particularly proud when he learned that the police were searching for him all over the city, enjoying the game of hide-and-seek with them. He chose to write a letter to the Hangzhou police. In that letter, he admitted to his crime and dared them to catch him by showing up in front of the police station between 6 a.m. and 7:30 a.m. on a specific morning while wearing camouflage. But Liu Chao didn't plan to come. He just loved the feeling of teasing the police who were waiting for him because of his letter. Afterward, he disappeared once again. Earlier, I said Hangzhou police had asked Liu Chao's hometown police to watch over his friends and families for assistance, right? It's likely that someone living away from home would want to reconnect with their childhood friends and families for emotional support and a sense of security. As expected, they intercepted a letter that Liu Chao had sent to his family. However, when the police opened the letter and read its contents, they furrowed. The letter was written to the police and did not mention any desire to contact his family. He seemed quite certain that the families were being monitored by the police. In the letter, he wrote about running away to northeastern China. He said there were a lot of police patrols and the security was tight, and how he had to move to another place before they caught him. Then there were more letters coming in and were filled with descriptions of different places, almost as if he was simultaneously evading and touring the landscape of China. Moreover, Liu Chao seemed to enjoy the idea of toying with the police, not showing up himself but sending frequent letters. He talked about where he hides and what he thinks about, as if he were telling an old friend. And whenever the Hangzhou police looked into the places he mentioned, they never found anything. This was probably what he wanted. Although he addressed these letters to his families and friends, he was convinced that the Hangzhou police would be the ones to read them. In each and every letter to the police, he made sure to cite it with his full name, Liu Chao. On a day in March 2000, Liu Chao wrote another letter. This time, he didn't write about emotions in a roundabout way. He stated that he had killed another person. In this letter, Liu Chao wrote that he had fled to Chuzhou, Zhejiang. He had heard that the city's public security was relatively good, with a high crime-solving rate among the police. So he wanted to kill someone to test the local police ability to solve crimes. After checking into a motel, he was considering whom to target next. By chance, he heard a motel's waitress whispering about something. She seemed to be a good fit for what he was looking for, so he picked her. On the 29th of February 2000, he bought a ticket to another area and then returned to the motel. He lured the lady into his room and dismembered her, just as he had done with his first victim. He described his modus operandi in great detail in this letter, like a bloodthirsty demon. He gave the police a lot of details about how he killed someone. This made him feel good because he got to remember it again, and also because he was showing off to the police. And on top of everything, that guy said he had an accomplice who acted with him. So if the police wanted information about his accomplice, they could send money to his bank account. 6,000 yuan could buy the location of an accomplice's hiding place, and he even offered installment payment options. Say providing a 3,000 yuan deposit in advance would also grant access to his accomplice's information. The letter included a detailed bank account number. The police must have thought this person was insane or foolish giving out his bank account details. It seems like an easy task to catch him with that information. So they proceeded to investigate the bank account provided in the letter, only to find that it didn't exist. From February 1999, when Liu Chao committed his first crime, until February 2004, he sent a total of 8 letters to the Hangzhou police. Each letter was full of provocation and read like updates on his life, much like posting on social media. And 2 of those included details on how he had killed and tortured his other victims during his trips. Apart from the waitress we mentioned, there were a pair of sisters also fell victims to his sinister actions. In 2004, the 9th letter arrived at the Hangzhou police station. Although the sender was unidentified, the content indicated that Liu Chao was hiding in Shouning City, Fujian province. The Hangzhou police, despite tired of this one-sided entertainment, had to take this letter seriously. After comparing the handwriting with his previous letters, it was clear that it was different, and this letter was not signed. Should they make the trip? For the past 5 years, Hangzhou police have been chasing Liu Chao's letters all over the country, but have made no progress. Perhaps this time they might actually find something useful. Regardless, they were not prepared to give up on the search for Liu Chao. If the information in this letter was accurate, they might finally apprehend him. If it turned out to be a false information, then it would be just another trip. With a hopeful yet somewhat gamble-oriented mindset, the Hangzhou police decided to dispatch officers to Shaoning City. According to their analysis, the address revealed in this anonymous letter had a certain level of credibility. After all, the location was relatively close to Liu Chao's hometown, just over 60 kilometers in a straight line. Unless they are extremely psychologically abnormal, most criminals who flee will feel lonely on such a solitary journey, as we humans are social animals. Many of them would eventually feel worn out and consciously or unconsciously head back towards their hometown. Like a cat let out at night, they would habitually circle around their own house, no matter how far they traveled. Under the joint efforts of the Hangzhou police and the local police, Liu Chao's trail was indeed found in Shaoning. The stake out, the arrest, and a series of actions, but all went surprisingly smoothly. After Liu Chao was arrested, the police conducted a thorough search of his residence. They found loads of adult videos, but also some DVDs that showed stories about solving crimes. Liu Chao was smart. He watched crime documentaries, DVDs, to learn how police solve cases. In China, there was a famous case called the Zhang Jun case, and there were numerous analytical films about his arrest. After he was caught, Liu Chao told the police that he enjoyed watching videos about true crimes, especially ones about Zhang Jun case, which I will tell sometime in future. He could remember some of the details really well. In addition to this, he somehow managed to procure the materials to create a homemade handgun, and it turned out to be quite effective. And somehow he also managed to get his hands on a real firearm. It seemed that he didn't forget the knowledge he gained during his military service. Okay, then when he was arrested, it turned out that he didn't have any accomplices as he claimed in one of those letters. For years, Liu Chao has been on the run while taunting the police, and his gruesome details of murder are extremely deviant. Therefore, Liu Chao underwent a psychiatric evaluation at a hospital in Zhejiang province. However, only a portion of this evaluation was reported, and it was stated that he was, quoted, conscious and clear, accurate in orientation, handsome in appearance, dressed neatly and cleanly, displayed a mild and refined attitude, conversed with a calm and smiling expression, and was courteous. When we look back at Liu Chao's personal life records from the God's perspective, we can discover the following. In elementary school, he would occasionally skip classes, tell lies, and engage in petty theft. In middle school, he developed sexual awareness and would peep at women bathing, steal women's personal belongings, and developed certain fetishes. In high school, he had a sexual relationship with a female classmate, and she got pregnant and abortion. Then they broke up. After finishing high school, Liu Chao joined the military. His performance in the army was quite impressive. He worked as a soldier and team leader in various departments such as the motor pool, farm, and Eunice's kitchen. He was recognized as outstanding and advanced among other owners. But everything changed since his accidental encounter with a murder case that occurred near the military base. Liu Chao used to visit the crime scene secretly and imagine how the crime was committed. He was eagerly waiting for it to happen again under his supervision. He felt, and I quote, "It's definitely going to be very exciting." His thoughts of killing started to affect other parts of his life. As we mentioned earlier, Liu Chao imagined cutting meat like cutting a human while cooking in the kitchen. He even experienced sexual impulses during this process. At this point, according to the records, Liu Chao's desire for killing had become incredibly strong. He had started to secretly leave the military base to look for prostitutes and would follow women who he found attractive. And he was still within the military. This is likely why, despite his strong urge, he hadn't actually acted on his desires yet. His behavior of secretly leaving the base might have been tolerated by his superiors once or twice, but with repeated occurrences, it would have been impossible for them to turn a blind eye any longer. So in May 1998, Liu Chao was kicked out of the military and sent home because he left without permission many times and involved with inappropriate sexual activities. Liu Chao said he actually told his comrades and superiors he wanted to kill, but no one treated seriously. So he broke the rules many times to get discharged from the military. And when he was asked about his feelings towards his killings, Liu Chao confessed. He felt very pleased and satisfied, his mind relaxed. He even kept a sweater which was splattered with bloodstains, placing it under his pillow, so he could often take it out and smell it, finding some comfort in doing so. On the last day of interrogation, he said if he wasn't caught, he'd continue his crimes and got himself an abandoned cave or a warehouse. Then he'd load and lock many people in there for him to enjoy torturing and killing. He'd make it his playhouse. At this point, I think we all could tell that Liu Chao is twisted. But how twisted is he? He must have antisocial personality disorder, as he obviously lacks compassion. And since he had been sending letters to provoke the police, that indicates histrionic personality disorder to me. Based on his experience, it is clear that he has a fetish and engaged in necrophilia by sexually assaulting the bodies of his victims. And the obvious sadism. These formed his paraphilic disorders. So when we compare Liu Chao to the infamous Zodiac killer in history, it's not difficult to see the similarities between the two. Both are antisocial personality disorder. The Zodiac killer showed that he didn't care about other people, planned his crimes ahead of time, and enjoyed what he did. He might have wanted to feel powerful and in control by killing people, even though he knew it was wrong. He did things that went against what most people consider normal and good, which could mean he had antisocial personality disorder. The histrionic personality disorder. The Zodiac killer liked playing pretend games with the police and the news, sending secret messages and puzzles. This showed that he really wanted people to notice him and think he was important, and that he was really focused on how he looked, how he talked to others, and making things dramatic. And these paraphilic disorders. The Zodiac was mainly known for committing murder. However, some of its behaviors could be related to paraphilic disorders, which involves getting pleasure from controlling others and feeling powerful, while this related to sadism. These serial killers, they truly each uniquely brutal, yet oddly shared a striking resemblance in their perversions. It's just that the degrees vary in different aspects. It's quite intriguing. Anyway, thank you for watching. And if you could like and follow, I'd really appreciate it. It helps me stay motivated to keep making videos. Bye!